This lesson discusses the MVC Model View Controller design pattern. Topics include: what is a design pattern? What about Model View Controller, also referred to as MVC? Why would MVC be beneficial in developing a website? And how can MVC be implemented? The discussion of design patterns has been going on for easily 20 years now. There's a good reference in the Wikipedia under software_design_pattern, which discusses this. In the discussion, you'll notice that there are what are called design patterns, which are solutions for certain types of situations. Software design patterns are typically designed to work with object-oriented programming. In terms of Model View Controller, the design pattern encompasses 3 separate classes. This is a way of subdividing your code into logical groupings to reduce the size of any one given file and also to isolate the logic into certain categories. The model category typically deals with a database or database access. In this example, we're looking at a class called model, which is designed to work with a database table dealing with user and account information. So we have properties representing the first and last names, account number, balance, whether or not they're a member, and their preferences. The different methods in this class, in this case, include setting of user information from a data array, showing the full name, showing account information, and finally extracting user information by ID. This last method is designed to emulate what would normally happen, which is to pull up the data from a database. Database access in PHP is discussed in other lessons. The view portion is designed to work primarily with output. In this case, you'll notice we have a method called render, which produces HTML. So we start out with the doc type, the opening HTML tag, the head, the title, meta tag, and finally the body information. There's also a method called setTitle, which produces an HTML title tag with content inside. The controller is designed to work with the model and the view. In this case, there's a method called showUserInformation or showUserInfo, which accepts a user ID. It instantiates the model, pulls up the user information by using the method getUserById from the model. It then sets that information back into the model, sets up the view, creates some information that will be in the body of the view, including the full name and the account information. The view is then rendered. As we saw earlier, the rendering of the view produces a full HTML web page. In order to activate the Model View Controller system, you would need some sort of primary file, which is oftentimes the index.php file. In this case, our primary file is oopmvc1.php. You'll notice we need to include the class before we can use it. The include command is discussed in another lesson. We instantiate the controller. We activate the showUserInfo method, supplying an ID. In this case, the ID is 1. What happens then is the controller method showUserInfo is activated. This method sets up the model, sets up the view, populates the view with information. Let's now look at the browser and see the output. So as you can see, we have a full web page displaying user information. Let's now make a slight change and change it to ID 2 instead of ID 1. Go over here, make a change. Save this, go back to the browser, refresh. As you can see, we now have access to user 2, which in this case is Winston Churchill, with the name, account number, balance, etc., etc. So in review, what is a design pattern? A design pattern is based on a book, Design Patterns, Elements of Reusable Object-Oriented Software, which has been highly influential in the development community. The architectural principles behind design patterns have actually been around for easily 20 years. What about Model View Controller? MVC is a way of breaking down your code into smaller categories, which makes it easier to develop a website by focusing on the model, which typically works with the database, the view, which works strictly with output, and the controller, which ties the two together. Why would MVC be beneficial in developing a website? MVC helps you focus on specific tasks when building a website. How can MVC be implemented? You would typically have some sort of basic starting point, such as index.php, which would set up the controller. The controller would then set up the model and the view. The controller would populate the view and then render the view. This concludes our discussion of introducing the MVC design pattern.